Alright, and thank you for joining me for another video. And friends, today I want to discuss the halacha of wearing a kippah on your head, a head covering. Now, today in the Jewish world, it has been accepted universally that if you're a Jew, you must wear a kippah, a head covering on your head, also known as a yarmulke, which is Aramaic for Yarmulke, fear of the king. But what is the halacha regarding wearing a kippah? Now, if you look up newer understandings of Jewish law from Rabbi Moshe, the Mishnah Berurah, the Taz, and even the Shulchan Aruch, you'll get a very synonymous view on the whole issue. And that's the understanding that it is mandatory, although perhaps not halacha. But like the halachic purists that we strive to be, we should always really strive to know the source of each issue and not just settle with hearsay. So that's what we did. My friends, I went to the Rambam, and why do we go to the Rambam or even consider the Rambam important in understanding the sources of halachot? Well, for those of us interested in knowing why we do things, the Rambam really acts like the proverbial canary in the mine. In other words, if the Rambam does not mention it, it most likely was made up. So according to him, according to the Rambam, in terms of halacha, one was only required to cover one's head during the Amidah. And regarding always wearing a kippah, the Rambam classified this to what others later called midat hasidut. In other words, just a pious thing to do, mainly because it was an act that was practiced by our sages, but not halacha. So, in other words, there is no real early halachic Talmudic source that teaches that according to Jewish law, one must wear a kippah. And like we said, the Rambam only brings it down regarding the Amidah. Now, regarding that Rambam in the Mishnah Torah, I looked in the Kesef Mishnah and the Lechem Mishnah, and they really don't point to any valid halachic source for the halacha. For one, they bring down the portion in Masechet Shabbat, which tells us of the story of Rabbi Nachman about his mother being told that he might possibly become a thief, so his mother makes him cover his head so that he could learn to fear heaven. Now this, by the simple fact that it mentions astrologers and all this pagan imagery, cannot be a source for the halacha, and for many other reasons as well. And also it brought down that portion in Masechet Kedushin that talks about Rabbi Huna, who wouldn't walk 4 cubits bareheaded because he would state that the Shekhinah was always above his head. A concept that the Rambam later brings down in Moreh Nevuchim for the reason of our sages covering their head, but he brings it down not as a halacha. So my friends, there is no way the Rambam derived his pasak for kippot during the Amidah from these portions. So honestly, regarding this halacha, I'm of the opinion that the Rambam must have derived his pasak from some lost sugya, which not even his commentators were aware of. Something that perhaps brings down the big day kahuna, the garments of the high priest, specifically the mitznefet, the priestly hat. Now that would make sense, being that virtually everything we do in terms of service to God comes from what they did, which makes sense why it would tie into the Amidah. And no, I'm not going to do like many do today in Paskin by later sources in an attempt to solidify a pious custom as halacha under the guise that they know what's good for us, they know what's better for us. Like many have done, let's say, regarding Mariv, making it a chiyuv instead of leaving it what it was, a reshut. So anyways, at first glance, I would have to hold like the chidah, that the whole practice of wearing a kippah, even during the Amidah, is midat hasidut, and that's it. Now, someone could say that, well, perhaps because it's already a minhag, that it's already a custom, we should just adopt it as halacha, right? It does say minhag Yisrael torechi or minhag Yisrael dinhu, right? Now, this only applies when the court, when the Sanhedrin itself institutes its custom, not the custom happens to be floating around and we sort of decide to solidify it. However, the truth is that because it has become a part of, let's say, the uniform of the pious of Israel, the practice of wearing kippot should continue to be observed as a visual rallying point for the religious among Israel, which is exactly how Rabbi Ovadia held, because if we're not visually united, we are useless in this fight, my friends. And again, all this is just regarding men. Women, of course, must cover up al pi halacha. And someone might mention regarding this topic, that portion in Masechet Brachot that brings down the list of blessings that we must say in the morning. And one of them is, he who crowns Israel with splendor. At which point one is supposed to put his head covering on. However, this is brought down as halakha, but only when one intends to cover their head. In other words, if he had no head covering, there would be no bracha. And again, no obligation, although it's brought down as a halakha. So, I'm for the wearing of kippot at all times in public as a distinguishing sign between us and non-Jews. But I'm also for acknowledging that it has no basis in halakha and should be taught in that manner. For more information on anything Jewish, please visit dordea.com. Thank you.